Now, the only last thing I need to do is set up some sort of a condition to happen when the player meets the goal object, which in our case is the amazing flaming salamander. So real similar to the collision method that we were calling to test for collisions between the obstacles. I'm going to do another collide method call on that player object. This time we are looking for collisions with the goal object. And when that happens, we're going to trigger the win function, which we haven't written yet, but let's go ahead and write that. So when the player collides with the goal object, I'd like the goal object to disappear. I'd also like all of the obstacles to disappear. So let's see if we can take a look in our reference. And what I'm looking for is to remove a sprite from the group, or actually this is more what I want. I'd like this remove sprites method to take everything in the group, remove it from the scene. So I'll call that method on my rock group. And let's go ahead and test that. Hey, there we go. So I have a fairly functional interactive game here. The very last thing I'd like to do is make a variable to keep track of the state of the game that I'm in. So whether I have just started, whether I'm currently playing, whether I've won, whether I've lost. And so you'll be able to see this a little bit more clearly if I collapse down this block. So you can see I have a state for playing, a state for losing, and a state for winning. And then down here in my functions, I can make some changes to that game state variable. Okay, I've saved out here. Just want to go ahead and see if those game state blocks are working. And they are working. Just need to do them correctly. Okay, so this was a very silly mistake on my part, and that is that I put my game state machine inside of my setup block and not my draw block. You might have even seen me doing that as I did it, so let's just do some quick copy pasting, and we should be good to go. So you can see I've got my lost state working correctly. Let's see if I can make myself win. So I'm noticing as I'm testing here, I have maybe a few too many rocks. So let's drop this down a little bit, and we can make that hopefully a little bit less impossible. That's looking better. And of course, you could imagine this being much more sophisticated in terms of the way that the player is allowed to move, the way that the rocks are organized throughout the canvas. Great. So I have my playing state, my lost state, my won state. Those are going great. The last thing I want to do is give the option to start a new game. And so if we think about this, all this code that's here in setup, other than create canvas, this is all the stuff we need to call to create a new game. So I can highlight this and Command X to cut it, and let's make ourselves a new game function. And that way we can basically reinitialize all of those variables, all of those sprites, anytime we need to. And what I'd like the functionality to be is after a player has either won or lost, they can just tap the screen to call that new game function and start over again. So I'm thinking of doing that in my touch started event. And so I'll do a conditional here that says if game state is not equal to playing, so that would mean it's either equal to won or lost, then call new game. So let's see if that actually works. Aha. So almost completely works. I noticed that I'm getting duplicate sprites, and so I think what I need to do is just have something that removes the sprites from my group. So let's make a new function. Actually, I don't even know if I need to make a new function. I should be able to just remove all sprites. So back up to my reference page here. Well, I can definitely call remove on an individual sprite. Let's see if I have any options. Nope, but not such a big deal. We can go ahead and just do that in our code. So let's make a function that's called remove all sprites. And so let's make sure I'm doing that correctly for the group. Remove sprites is what I want. So we'll remove the player, remove the goal, and then I'll also just go ahead and loop through the rock object array just to make sure that we're getting rid of everything. Let's see, and actually I can just copy this for loop. So this way, we can call our new game function from setup the very first time we run the sketch. Anytime that we have gotten into the win or lost states, we can call remove all sprites first and then call new game. And that way we get a totally clean blank slate. Oh, and actually I'm noticing one more thing here, which is I need to adjust the state of the game so that when we do all those resets, we actually go back and decide that we're playing. Otherwise, we're just locked in restarting a new game over and over and over again. There we go. So I'm noticing as I swipe multiple times, I'd like to be able to speed up. So if I'm looking here, I can see, when the touch is ended, I'm creating the vector, which is the direction that the touch swipe went in. And so I'm thinking that this is basically replacing whatever the current velocity is. And since I'm normalizing that motion vector, I'm basically always setting the speed to a constant. I think I can tweak this if I'm able to reference the current velocity and add it to whatever the player vec x and y components are. So let's see if I can look up the sprite object and see if there's a method to get the current velocity. And I think that's what I want, so get speed. So let's see if we can say player object, get speed. Oh, and what does that return? Scalar speed. Okay. I think that should work. So we can just add whatever that is to the direction that we are adding with the vector. Let's see if that gives us the behavior that we're looking for. Okay, that did not exactly behave the way that I thought, so let's go back. Let's see if I could just get the velocity. Yeah, I think that's more in line with what I want here. This is looking really good. Of course, I could spend unlimited amounts of time tweaking this and messing around with it. I think the last touches that I'll put on this, which I won't record here, are making sure that it can actually go full screen, and then maybe adjusting the density of these obstacles in terms of how they're laid out. And luckily, I have a pretty good setup for that already in my new game function, where I'm just using some random settings to control that distribution. So overall, this should hopefully be a nice, pretty in-depth overview of how to use a library